Remember the end of the Christian Coalition? Well, let's go back and look how it started. It involved the debut of Fatu, aka Junior Fatu, Rikishi. Cage would call out the biggest Samoan that Cornette could find for him. Instead of assuming it would be Samoa Joe, they ended up having an issue with Fatu. But backstage, AJ will be more focused on the party he had for Christian's segment on his talk show. Meanwhile, Tomko wasn't having much of it as he was more focused on trying to get the tag titles back. Tomko would get involved in a match featuring Fatu, but it would be Joe making the save, taking down Tomko and Styles and Cage, all the Christian Coalition. They would then take turns dropping headbutts on Tomko. Bam, one for Joe. Bam, one for Fatu. Bam, another one for Joe for good measure. This is the only time they will stand side by side. Oh, wrong angle, wrong angle. Ah, too bad AJ threw up. Here's got to be one of the best parts of the Cage and Joe feud, the island segment. AJ went all out for this one. He was real happy the whole time. He was mixing drinks, he was partying, but Samoa Joe wasn't feeling any of it. He came down just mocking Christian Cage ahead of Bound for Glory, where they would have the world title match. AJ wasn't even just playing in the bartender, he was actually mixing drinks. I don't know if he was making stuff, but he said, "Here, try this." And then Cage would take his sip. Joe would be like, "Nah," throw it in his face. He would end up beating down Cage, yeeting AJ over the out of the bar area. He would try to crack Joe in the head with a little, what was that, a guitar? A ukulele? Well, either way, it didn't do much. But Cage would somehow maneuver his way behind Joe and just crack him in the head with a coconut, just beating him down with it. Took him a while to find it, but once he got it, he was going hard. And Styles and Tomko would beat Truth and Pacman Jones to get the TNA Tag Titles back. Let's see how Christian Cage did. Bam! He nails it! Yeah, it's safe to say Joe wasn't feeling getting cracked in the head with a coconut, but the loss aside, Cage had another issue to deal with. Tomko and Styles were now part of the Angle Alliance, and due to AJ Styles' loyalty to both, he would try to convince Kurt Angle and Christian Cage to join forces so that way they would be able to work together and fight good forces of evil? I don't know. But meanwhile, AJ Styles would hold a summit between the two sides where he would get Christian Cage and Karen Jarrett to shake hands and represent Team Angle and the Christian Coalition. And to this day, I feel like the character of Andy from The Office was based on AJ Styles' life. Just look at how happy he is now. And he tells him, "Suck it, Tomko." But Cage, however, didn't trust Karen for a second or anyone on Kurt Angle's side. And adding to the mistrust, during the six-man tag, it seemed like AJ had everything under control, but it seemed like Joe had everything under control. But then he would poke AJ in the eye, causing AJ to hit the Pele kick, accidentally cracking Cage instead of Joe. He would send him over the ropes, hit the muscle buster, and take another win over the Coalition. And he would then, wait, what the? They were actually on a team. I told you they were. If you know, you know. The two would have a meeting in ring, and this is during the time where Kurt Angle was experimenting with those cool glasses. Look at those cool glasses. But ultimately, in the end, Cage realized he can't trust anybody but himself. Cage would antagonize Tomko, and he would get the upper hand over him, only AJ Styles would come back up as tag partner. They would get the upper hand, and for some reason, I can't remember honestly, but Kevin Nash made the save, run in, that thereof. You could barely say run in. And then in the end, it came down to Lockdown 2007. Cage and Styles on top of the cage, slamming barely through the table. He would get his knee up. My favorite part of this match was that little secret doorway where it was just an opening. I would have just been climbing through that all day if I was in the match. But then James Storm would crack a bottle over Matt Morgan before getting gored, flipping 57 times, taking the team win. I don't remember who was teaming up. If I remember right, there was like run-ins and substitutions, but either way, Team Angle won the match. And that's just a very brief summary of the end of the Christian Coalition, one of TNA's greatest factions of all time.